Hi, tutors. Thank you so much for joining us today on this Tuesday to hear from Allison, who a lot of you may know as our regional coordinator for Skid Row Learning Center here. Today she's going to be talking about tutoring solutions, advice and tips to suit your students' needs. So I will let her introduce herself a little bit more here because she has an epic soundtrack we're going to start off with. Yeah. No, you're good.
Hi everyone, so my name's Allison. Welcome to the workshop, Tutor Solutions. Just wanted to let you guys know if you have any questions along the way, you can feel free to submit them in the question section, which is in the menu key on the side of your webinar. So feel free to submit and we'll get to them throughout the workshop or at the end. All right, so my name's Allison. In case you don't know me, just to give you a little bit of background on myself and or why you should even be listening. So before working with School on Wheels, I've been here for about 6 years now. Before that, I worked as a special education teacher for about 5.5 years. I worked with emotionally disturbed and autistic students of kindergarten through 12th grade. I was the art teacher, cheerleading teacher, yoga teacher, assistant vice principal, volunteer coordinator, basically anything you could think of at that school, I was a part of it. And I decided to do a community service project and we donated to School on Wheels. After I came and dropped off the supplies, I was shocked that as a teacher in the school system for years and years, I had no idea that there were so many homeless students. I personally had found out there were multiple homeless students in my class. And seeing such a huge need, a couple months after donation, I left teaching and have been with School on Wheels for 6 years now. I work at the Skid Row Learning Center, the after-school program. We help a little over or about 300 kids a year. So do the math, I've helped a lot of kids. All right, so a couple people submitted some questions, so I'm definitely going to be able to address those questions. And I also have some concepts that were connected to the questions and kind of overlapped on everybody. So we're going to go through that in the end. First thing we're going to talk about is group sessions, dealing with structure and consistency. We're then going to spend time talking about resources, how to spend less time planning on your own outside of the sessions, and how to better prepare for the sessions more efficiently. And then we're going to work on refocusing and utilizing extra energy that the students may have. So specifically, possibly ADD students or students that are just super duper excited to be around you. Those are the topics based on request, and some connected concepts that connected to that would be, we're going to speak about hidden curriculum and growth mindset. So those are some things we're going to go over at the end. First, we're going to acknowledge one of the tutor requests. The request was for group sessions for homework and tutoring. So it didn't have too specific of a request. So what I did was decided to talk about structure and routine. And then we're going to talk about as well after that different ways to help the session. So the first thing I want to let you know is these are some ideas for you, how to help you to alleviate that stress, how to alleviate the pressure of figuring out what to do in a group session with multiple students. One thing you can do, you can keep a log to monitor student needs. I have tutors at the Learning Center that even have little mini like reporter notebooks, and they'll write down the student's name and just a simple word like multiplication. You know, making a note that that student struggled with multiplication during the session. So if at the next session they don't have any homework or they finish it quickly, they can have a quick visual reminder as opposed to going back into your School on Wheels login and rereading the previous sessions. They'll keep it in a small little notebook on the side. I'll even have students enter the info, like at the end of the session, maybe writing down like, I was able to do this, or I need more help with this, so that you can even remind the student and be like, hey, this was your idea. You're the one who wanted to work on this. And it's not so much you telling them what they need to work on. When you're in a group session, you're going to want to avoid student performance comparison. What I mean by that is You want to avoid phrases such as, oh, but look how good so-and-so's doing. If you just refocus, you'll do that good too. Look at how much so-and-so's gotten done, because you don't want the student to feel that they have to be compared to another and that their strengths and needs are always going to be compared. Feel free to use other students' behavior as example. I might say something to another student like, oh, do you see that student sitting right there? Does he look quiet or does he look really loud? Okay, well, he looks quiet. Great. Do you think that's helping him focus or do you think that's distracting him? So this way, you're allowing the student to see what you expect from them. You're allowing them to see what they can and how they can act, but you're not comparing them to another person, you know, their brain or how they're thinking or how that student's developing. Another thing that works really great for group sessions, because I tend to get flustered sometimes if there's maybe 4 or 5 kids sitting around you and all of them are, I need this, I need that, I need this, I need this, or I'm good, or look at this, look at that. You know, it gets a little overwhelming. So in order to restructure that, you can give the kids cards multiple different ways. You can give it on a ring, you can give it on a little flag, you can give them different color pencils, whatever is available to you at that time. And you set a structure for you and your students, you know, like if you have the green color pencil out, you're good. You don't need me, you're progressing. If you have the yellow one out, you know, you might need help on a problem, you might be struggling, but, you know, just come and help me out and motivate me a little bit. And red is like, I have no idea what's going on, I'm just stuck. Can you come and help me? And then we do a student choice. It could be their favorite color as their way of saying, look, I'm done, I accomplished something, I feel good. The other part with this is the kids get to write their own little phrases on the card, so they're free to use like slang. I have one student, I did this for a couple years ago on his I'm stuck card. He wrote, don't, like Homer Simpson. So it was really fun. They got to have that kind of variety and that experience. And it also helps those students that are too embarrassed to raise their hand. They're too embarrassed to say, you know, I don't get it. I'm confused. Everybody's ahead of me and I don't get it. This way it's a simple little pencil on the paper, or a little index card, or scrap of paper, something really discreet. Not only will it help the student voice their own needs and self-advocate, it will also allow you to not feel so overwhelmed where you just get to look around the cards, you know, praise the student for having their card out. When you see all the greens, you can step back and be really proud of yourself to know everybody's doing good. So it's just a great visual technique to allow for that structure and to keep the routine going so the students know how to ask for help or what you expect of them. All right, to continue on to that, to add on to the structure, there's a couple of things you can do to help the students. One thing we've done before is you could design a divider. It could be anything as simple as a manila folder, 3 pieces of construction paper taped together, a science board cut in half to make 2, multiple options on how to make these dividers, but it allows for privacy and for focus. You could have the tutor design it where you put in different resources like the picture on the bottom where it has different notes and clues and tips and tricks, or you can have the top one where the students, or you could design it with motivational phrases and just something that's a little more encouraging. I've had students do this and they'll put up pictures of, you know, their favorite celebrities or cartoon characters, just something that makes them smile and might be a little bit more encouraging for them as well. These work really great in group tutoring sessions, especially for if you have a couple kids that just really want to look on each other's work or they're all doing the same thing. This will be a great way to sort them out, as well as it prevents having to have a student face the wall and, like, you know, turn and look at the wall so you're not distracted by everybody and you're facing the wall. You know, it avoids that seclusion so that they all get to be sitting at the same table, maybe near each other, and it works really well. My favorite part about it is also the versatility of it. You can put these on the floor and the kids can sit, you know, cross-legged. They can lay on their belly. They can use a clipboard. They can sit in different areas of the room. This doesn't just limit you to sitting in one space and in one chair. One thing you can also do for the group sessions is you can make a schoolwork folder, not necessarily a manila folder, but I have a picture at the bottom, an open folder, just paper folder with pockets. It's not just for homework, so we call it the schoolwork folder. This way, students, you can tell your student whenever we have a session, this is what you bring with you. When you come to group tutoring, this is what you bring with you. If you have an activity in class you didn't finish, this is where you put it. On one tab, we'll put the words to do, so the students know this is where they put the work that is incomplete, that needs to be worked on, that they need your help on. And on the other side, you put in turn in, so they know that's what they have to give to their educator at school. A lot of times when teachers give homework folders, they'll put the wording at home or keep at home or do at home. The reason I like making our own is because it avoids that word home, and it avoids saying homework. So it allows that flexibility to do all the classwork, and the student's not always just saying, but I don't have homework, but I don't have homework. Then you could say, well, where's all the other work you haven't completed? Or, you know, did your teacher give you anything back to recheck? And you can have that consistent folder with them, and they know to always bring that with them. One thing I've also done is on the inside of the folder, since it is made of paper, you can easily write notes. So I've written notes to the teachers before, and even just said something like, hasn't had homework last 2 weeks, is this valid? You know, kind of asking the teacher, is the student genuinely not have work, or are they forgetting to bring it to me? The good part about that is, since it is paper, you know, you can keep a running log of all the times you've spoken to each other. It's something that the student can be responsible for as well, and be that connection between the teacher and the tutor. It helps the student feel really connected and like they're a part of the educational process as well. All right, so we're going to talk more about stuff for group tutoring later, but right now that was the main stuff I wanted to address. The next thing we're going to talk about is we had a tutor request. I enjoy using games, cards, manipulatives in my sessions. Is there more efficient ways to find resources? This is a lifelong question for all teachers. The first thing I always advise anyone of is, before you ever sign up for any educator websites, look through it first and make sure that it has a lot of free resources, because a lot of times teachers or educators or volunteers or tutors or whatever will sign up for these websites, and then you're going to get bombarded with spam or a lot of emails for websites where they're going to request you pay a lot. So please avoid that. On the current slide, I have a couple options on what I use the most. I use Pinterest a lot. When I do it, I search by the subject and grade, because that's going to give you right away quick and easy activities. You want to avoid words like DIY or easy. DIY is do it yourself, because that, honestly, every time I click that, I end up spending so much time cutting and gluing, and it's just way too much work. You also want to avoid the word easy, because easy tends to be a way of saying this is a quick game, they're going to finish it really easily, and you're going to have to plan more stuff. So whenever I type in those words, I find I don't get what I need. Use the words quick, so that you're talking about I need quick prep, quick setup, quick learning, quick instructions. And simple, you know, you want something with simple materials, simple amount of supplies. So make sure that you use those words, and try to avoid DIY, especially if you don't want to spend hours gluing randomness. You're also, I personally, when I'm on Pinterest, I just look at the pictures a lot. I rarely click on the pictures to go to the link, because you never know where that link's going to send you. So I look at the pictures and I adapt that to fit what I need. So I might look at a picture of, and we're going to go over later some ideas I've actually gotten from Pinterest. But one example would be, if you look at a picture of students with a dry erase board, I might notice that on top of that, they also have like multiple colors, or they're doing something else, or there's worksheets on the side, or, you know, I look at the pictures for ideas as opposed to reading the articles. A lot of the articles on Pinterest link to blogs, and a lot of the blogs are looking for clicks and time spent, so they have a lot of unnecessary wordiness before they even get to what you want to talk about. So honestly, stick to the pictures, utilize that resource first. There's another website I use called Teachers Pay Teachers. The reason I like this one is because it's basically an open forum for teachers to post stuff that they've done before. And the best part about this is it's stuff made by teachers in the classroom. It is not a literature or a publishing company coming up with the workbook, and, you know, they've never been in a classroom before. This is actual teachers who have designed worksheets and work activities and games that have been implemented in the classroom. Whenever I'm on this website, I always type in free when I'm searching, because a lot of them will have free options to get you interested in their site. The way I look at it, it's kind of like an Etsy for curriculum, I guess. Also, when I'm on that website, I really like reading the comments. The comments tend to be more helpful than the articles, because the comments, people type in really quick and easy comments, and they give you adaptations. They're like, oh, this game was fun, but then we did this. This game was fun, but I did this with it. So it can turn one game into 5 different sessions because you have all sorts of different ideas now. One thing that's going to be helpful for volunteers, especially in one-on-one tutors, homeschool websites and blogs. A lot of stuff you're looking at for educators is going to be meant for the classroom. It's going to be a game for like 8 to 10 kids, large worksheets, big productions. If you look on homeschool websites and blogs, it works best for smaller groups because they're only working with their children. So it's a really chill, small group session activities, a lot of one-on-one games that you could read about. And since it is a homeschool situation, they avoid textbooks and large group games. So this way, you're really catering to those small group sessions, those one-on-one sessions, and you're able to find 1 or 2 blogs that really connect with what your students are working on. The best part about those are a lot of homeschooling parents or guardians connect with each other. So once again, the comments are very helpful to saying like, oh, my kids did it this way and my kids enjoyed it this way. And it really helps keep that creativity alive when you're coming up with new activities. At the bottom are just 2 other websites I use a lot because they tend to come with less paid worksheets and a lot more just PDFs that you could print out nice and easy. So the bottom is just some more examples to help you guys out a little bit. All right, so we're going to go into a little bit more later on how to find out hidden curriculum and to make up some more ways. First, I'm going to address another question that we had, which was the tutor works with 4 to 6 students, mostly with ADHD or just too much energy, and they're looking for ways to techniques to gauge their attention. This is difficult all around. So just number 1, be flexible and have patience. When I was working with emotionally disturbed students, I would tell everybody all the time, you know, I practice the art of winging it. You never go in with a set 100% plan because it's going to change. So you need to go in prepared for flexibility. You need to go in prepared for transitions and, you know, activities getting canceled. So one thing you should always do, utilize that energy. If they have it, you're not going to get rid of it. You're not going to make it go away with just saying it or begging the kid to. So you need to literally wear them out. One way we do that is we call it action math. This could be done with any worksheet. It's not even a separate game. It's just a supplement to doing math. So age, grade, doesn't matter. Whatever they're doing, you have them run, you have them jump, you have them clap, you have them do something to show you the answer. I've had students that will do jumping jacks. They'll do 5, the next student do 8, and they'll count them together. Or when they have to multiply, they have to, you know, run in circles as they're trying to, you know, anything you can think of. I've even had students that would stand in one spot of the room, think of the answer, and then like run to their worksheet on the other side of the room to go write it down. So they would come back and forth, they'd be releasing that energy, and above all, not forcing the kids to sit in a chair especially. Let them get up and utilize that energy. Another thing we do, it's a language arts charades, which is basically our way of saying be very expressive while you're doing language arts. I say the cheesier, the better. The more ridiculously you look, the better. If you're teaching kids about, you know, verbs, get up and act them out. If you're teaching kids about people, places, and things, have them draw stuff, have them act it out, have them teach them how to tell stories with their hands and movement. So this way they feel like their energy is being utilized and not a burden. Another thing you could do, it's called the trash can toss. It's not necessarily you have to use a trash can, but what we've done before is we'll have students with like 2 or 3 boxes on the table, you know, really simple, like crayon boxes or anything. And we have different numbers on them or different letters, and the students have to like throw an eraser or throw something towards the box to knock down the correct answer. You know, something to keep the kids engaged so that they're not just doing the work on paper. They might be learning actively, they might be moving, they might be feeling the learning and the education as opposed to just writing it down. They can get up, they can do whatever they need to do, and then write down the answer afterwards. So this way you're utilizing their energy, not just trying to stifle their energy. Another thing you can do if you're not allowed for the space maybe, or just the location doesn't allow for running or loudness, you know, you can transfer that energy into different methods. You want to refocus that student's energy so that they don't feel ignored, but they do feel that they're getting out their energy. Chair bands are really helpful. I have a picture here of multiple chair bands. They're all DIY, which I know I said don't use that word, but in this case it's helpful. But on this one, like for example, one of them is just a pool noodle with some string. You know, tie that around, the kid can roll their foot on the pool noodle, they can lift it, they can stretch it. The top one with the blue chair is just a simple tension bands. Those workout tension bands you can use. Bungee cords, the stuff that you use to, you know, clamp your ice chest shut. You can wrap one of those around and let the kid move their feet around. The one on the bottom is really cool too. They got giant wooden beads and just wrapped like a jump rope around it, and then they wrap the jump rope around the chair legs. So it gives kids the opportunity to keep their legs active. I always call these kids the earthquake makers because they're the ones that keep their foot shaking under the table and like the whole table shakes and it just annoys everybody. So this way they can retransfer that energy into the chair band. You can also use tennis balls. They're not as distracting as you would think. I have students that will use a tennis ball and put it in the crook of their elbow and just like flex back and forth so they have some feeling going on. I've had students that'll put it under their palm and roll it around on the table, even putting it on the small of their back against the chair. It really helps so that they feel some type of sensory in another area, location on their body, so that they can refocus their thoughts into the work. A soccer ball is really helpful if you're in a one-on-one situation in a small space. I'll put it on the floor and just let the students roll their foot on it, you know, bounce it against the wall really softly. It helps in between breaks, in between activities, to take little breaks with it. So you could just like lightly smack it back and forth, or, you know, throw it in the air, whatever your location allows for. The last one here is a little picture I added. This one I've tried before. It only works with the younger students, obviously, but you can get just a Dollar Tree beach ball and blow it up halfway, and it acts like a little bouncy yoga ball on the seat for the kid. So it wobbles them around, it keeps their bottom half active so that their arms and their brain can focus on the activity at hand, as opposed to, you know, wanting to sit in the getting out of the uncomfortable chair. A lot of times ADD issues, or ADHD actually, it's a sensory issue. They need to be stimulated. They need to have that energy utilized. They need help on focusing their thoughts because maybe there's so many thoughts going on at one time, they can't focus on the direction you're giving them. If you say something like, okay, can you get out your pencil and then sit in the chair and then get out your homework and then do this, ADD kids are going to focus on one thing at a time, and they're not going to be able to follow many, many steps. They might need that help to refocus or to utilize that energy to keep their mind where it needs to be. Some more steps you could take to deal with focus and frustration. We'll do a focus check-in. I try really hard not to tell the students like, well, we just did this or we just did this. I would say maybe every couple of minutes, stopping and saying, okay, what did we just talk about? What did we just do? What did we just learn? So this way you're not waiting till the very end. You're doing consistent check-ins throughout the session to help that student stay focused and to remind them what task you're doing at hand. I might even list 2 things. So I might say, for example, okay, tell me 2 things that we have done in math. tell me 2 things that you have said to make another student happy. You know, list some, and the reason we do 2 is because if you do 1, it tends to be, oh, it was good, or something really simple. If you ask for more than 1, they tend to spend more time thinking of the second thing. So you can get more conversation and more observation out of the kid's personality just by hearing what kind of subjects they bring up. And that also helps the student, if their brain's going in like a million directions, it helps them realize, you know, your brain's okay. We just need to help you filter those thoughts and figure out which order of the thoughts should be listened to in, and how to get your work done, but still think of those thoughts at the same time. So you really want to let the student know that that hyperactive brain is not a bad thing. It's just something that we need to work with. You also want to do, this one's really funny. I like doing the incorrect wording. So if I'm working with a student that I think is like daydreaming, or I catch them staring at the computer behind me, I'll say something absolutely ridiculous. So one example would be, if I'm doing math, I'll tell the student, okay, so we just walked into the supermarket and we're buying 5 eggs at $5 a piece. And that's expensive. And if I notice the student's not paying attention, I might say something like, okay, you walked into the supermarket and there's a giraffe at the register and he asks you what you need to buy. If I notice the student didn't even blink or realize what I just said, then you know they're not paying attention. I'll even have students who aren't even looking at me, and I'll say that, and they'll turn and say, what? Where'd that giraffe come from? Cool, at least I know you're still listening to me, even though you might not be staring and visually focused. At least I know you're still engaged. I always want to remember that focused doesn't always mean perfect eye contact, perfect body language. I personally, myself, on my desk, I have 2 laptops. One is for work and one is for TV, because I need to have that stimulation of some other sound, or else I can't focus. And I mean, that helps me a lot when I'm thinking of my students, because if I need that, I can't imagine the things that they might need that they haven't even discovered yet. On the side, there's just some quick pictures of, if you don't have access to a tennis ball, or you want the kids to make their own little sensory balls, those are just some items you can use with some balloons. This way you can kind of mass produce stress balls or fidget balls if you need to. Also at the bottom are little just fidget tools that you can use, because I know, like, those, what do they call those? Fidget spinners. Oh, the worst thing ever. I know a lot of teachers have banned them. A lot of schools have. Actually, a lot of shelters have as well. So here's some good substitutions on what a student can use that's not as distracting, and can also work as like a free time toy as well. When you're working with students dealing with their levels of frustration, you're going to want to check out their baseline. Baseline basically means, who are they? Where they are? What's their typical behavior? What's their typical attitude? And then this way you can see, like, oh, okay, well, I could tell this student usually comes in, you know, quiet every day, but that's his baseline. Oh, if he comes in yelling at someone, oh, it's going to be a rough day. So this way you can kind of notice the observations on your students and prepare yourself mentally. It also helps you realize how long before they lose focus. So I might start working with students, and maybe after like 15 minutes, I'll make a mental note of who stopped paying attention or who's still really into it. So this way you can remind yourself, like, okay, this student's not focused. Let's do something to refocus him or her. You know, try a privacy board. Maybe that keeps them focused longer. Try fidget cube. Maybe that keeps them focused longer. And just check out to see what works. Another thing you want to do is look for triggers. Triggers are basically anything that you notice consistently frustrates a student. For example, I have one student who his trigger is his teacher gives him homework packets for the entire week. But some weeks the teacher fails to write down on the worksheets which one is to do on different days. That sounded confusing, but I'm sure that made sense. Basically, the kid might get like 10 worksheets. The teacher failed to say these are on Monday, these are on Tuesday, these are on Thursday. So right away, if I don't see those dates on top, that kid's gonna freak because he thinks he needs to get it done in one day. So right there, I've learned that student's trigger. So when he takes out his homework, he hands it to me right away. and I'm able to just check if the dates are there on top. So being able to find those triggers, what makes the kids feel frustrated, what makes the kids feel angry, will help you in the long run, because if you can avoid the trigger, then you can help the student deal with the trigger. For example, with that student, anytime I noticed the dates weren't on there, I would right away eventually start telling him, you know, the dates aren't on this. Do you want to, how many worksheets do you think we should do today? And we could write it on top. Do you want to plan for the whole week and spread out the whole week? What do you want to do? So this way the student gets to avoid being frustrated, as well as now has control over what used to frustrate. So, you know, instead of getting angry like, oh, my teacher wants me to do this all in one day, the kid can now take a step back and be like, oh, my teacher forgot. I can now decide which days I do it on. And that'll be a big help, just doing those little check-ins and little triggers and observations for yourself. All right. So next we're going to go over just some connected concepts that I have seen throughout the different questions and just things I've realized while I was researching specific answers. Motivation and focus. Everybody has trouble with motivation and focus. Even as adults, you know, nobody's ever 100% focused 100% of the time. If you are, I want to meet you and figure out how you do that. But as far as I know, everybody needs help every once in a while. So a couple things you could try is, you know, let student guide you towards goals and rewards. I always allow the students to pick what they want to do for free time, pick what they want to do at the end of the session, decide little things. So on the side of the slide here, I have 2 examples of game boards that we've used for students. So the best part about these game boards are they are 100% personalizable. You can say every square is 1 problem, every square is 5 minutes. Every square is 1 page. You can totally adapt it to what the kid feels he or she can accomplish. You can then decide the reward system at the end. It could be something as tangible as a sticker to something as intangible as a high five and a note to the teacher. You want to be able to let the student set those guidelines, so you can even let them decide what their game piece is going to be. I have one little girl who loves to use her hair tie, like a little hair bow from her hair, and put it on the board. I have a little boy who keeps a Lego little man in his backpack, and he'll pull him out for the game board. And just allowing that to guide the session and let the student feel self-motivated. The best part too about the game boards is it doesn't have to only apply to work, it could also apply to behavior. So I might tell the student, okay, you have 6 squares to go on today. Every time you finish 5 minutes of work without a problem, you'll get another square. Every time you throw your pencil on the table, have to take away a square. You know, kind of letting them know that their behaviors do have consequences, but you're also giving them lots of positive feedback for the behaviors you want to keep seeing. You want to see them keep doing positive things, so you want to reward that as opposed to constantly pointing out the faults. Unfortunately, our students have possibly dealt with a lot of trauma where their faults are all that have been pointed out, or their faults are all that have been ingrained in them. So you want to make sure to continually point out that positive stuff, to continually tell the kid, you know, right now you're saying I won't do it, but you know, you can do it if you just ask some questions and there's some steps we can take. You know, is it because you won't do it, or you can't do it because it's too hard? You know, just talking about different things like that. I use this little step chart all the time, right away just at the bottom. If I see a student shut down, I'll bring the chart up to them and ask them, you know, is this something you can't do because it's too difficult and you don't understand it? Or is it something you won't do because you're just not feeling it today? And usually the student will tell me, like, I just won't do it. I'm just not in a good mood. I just don't want to do it. Or if they shut down or don't say anything, then I know they just won't do it. That's when you give them time and you come back and you ask them, you want to do it now? Are you ready to ask me how do I do it? Are you ready to try to do it? And you go up those steps and you really help the student feel accomplished and to feel like they have been a part of the process instead of just you motivating them and guiding them. You want them to self-motivate. You want them to be in the classroom and look at that paper and think like, all right, I can't do this, but how do I do it? All right, now I'm going to try to do it. Okay, I can do it. Sweet. Look at tutor, I did it. And be able to have that kind of lineage of confidence. Excuse me. All right, this is my favorite part. I call this hidden curriculum. This connects to everybody's questions, you know, what to do during homework club, what to do for kids with ADD, what to do with resources. Use what you know and just be super duper creative. Here's a bunch of examples of pictures of different games. I'm going to go through each one, but just to kind of break it down a little bit. So the first one, Legos. Who does not love Legos? We'll use this to teach fractions. Personally, I am not a fan of fractions. I have a very difficult time with them. I love decimals. I'm really good with them. But for some reason, fractions and me, we butt heads. But when I learned about Legos, it changed. It makes it so much easier. It's a visual, it's a manipulative, it's just fun. You can also use it to teach geometry, teaching the students to make different shapes, different 3D figures. It also works good for students with patterns and just the younger ones learning different structures and patterns. The next is just the simple book, I Spy. Who doesn't love I Spy from back in the day? You know, where's Waldo? Every page is just silly. It has a bunch of pictures. It has randomness. So you can literally use this as an I Spy book, you know, take a break, refocus on the book, who can find it faster. Or what I do with it is I turn it into a language arts lesson. I'll open up to a random page and I'll tell the kids, all right, we're going to point out 5 random things and you have to write a story with those 5 things in regards to this picture. Or who could find 3 things that start with the letter Q, or who can find this, or, you know, just be creative. Even let the kids say, like, okay, what do you guys want the next round to be? My favorite is I had a student say, we should use the words at the bottom and turn them into sentences. So I was like, tight, let's do that. So the words at the bottom were like 4 rabbits and 3, you know, dinosaurs, and the kids had to write a sentence about 4 rabbits and 3 dinosaurs. We would even do math and say, like, okay, if there's 16 cars on here, what's the difference between cars and airplanes? Turn it into a math problem, have them find all the cars, have them find all the airplanes, and then do that into math. So yeah, that one could be utilized in many, many ways, and it's just a book. Underneath that is the Scrabble tiles. I love Scrabble tiles, especially without the board, because the board intimidates a lot of kids. So instead of using the board, I just bust out the tiles. And for the little ones, have them put them in ABC order. Have them sort them by the letters. Separate the vowels. For the older students, we'll have them, I say, okay, you have to, here's 15 letters. I need an 8-letter word. Or here's 20 letters. I need to see how many words you can make out of these 20 letters. You know, turn those tiles into as many different games as you can think of. My favorite part with that one is we've even used the tiles in like we draw pictures and we'll use the tiles to make different shapes and just kind of be like a 3D structure on it, because once you flip them over, they're just, you know, little wood squares. So you can write on them and use them for whatever you want. You can put numbers on them, change up. You know, Scrabble's not going to sue you. You'll be fine. Next to that, Connect 4. Connect 4 is always a big hit. What the great part about Connect 4 is you could take the squares and we've put little Velcro pieces on them, and then you can make little cute, what are they, circles. Little circles to go on top of that, Velcro off and on. You could put letters. So you have to do a 4-letter word. First one to make a 4-letter word in order wins. First one to have all their numbers add up to 10. You know, first one to have all their numbers be even. You know, whatever you want. You could totally get creative. You can let the kids get creative. And it's Connect 4. It's interactive. It's fun. It's a good time. Above that, playing cards. Playing cards are awesome. They can actually be played in multiple different ways. The picture here is called a multiplication circle. So you basically put all the playing cards in a circle, like a hypnotize symbol. Everybody starts in the middle, and you roll the dice. Whatever card you're on, say for example you're on the 5. If you roll a 6, you have to answer 6 times 5. If you get it correct, you actually get to move 5 pieces. If you get it incorrect, you don't get to move. Just so you can make it around the hypnotize symbol first. You can use any equation, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, all of those good ones. We even play multiplication war with the cards. So we'll put 2 cards down. First one to multiply them gets the cards. You just have to assign numbers to the face values, which is even more fun, because then you have to see which kids can remember the face values and how much you gave each amount. So yeah, deck of cards works really well. Also, dominoes. I love dominoes. The reason for this is we don't just play regular dominoes. You can adapt this game to fit multitude of different ways. So one of my favorite ways is that when you play dominoes, typically you have to match the number. So if there's a 6 on the end, you have to put a 6. My way is if there's a 6 on the end, you have to put something that'll equal up to another even number. So you can attach a 4. 6 plus 4 equals 10, even number. They can't put a 3 because 6 plus 3 equals 9, odd number. So anything like that, changing it up, making it interactive, keeps it really fun. You can also use the dominoes to make equations. So you can tell the student, say for example, this domino plus this domino equals this. So you can give the student a blank equation with an answer, and they have to use the dominoes to actually make an equation. It's very interactive. Most of the times when my students do it, they're standing up and just moving around the table and kind of exploring different pieces. It gets really interactive, especially when you have like 2 kids working on a team and another 2 kids. You want to see who can make the most equations. You know, just have fun with it. Look at games you enjoy. Pictionary. Pictionary is great for kids. Make those into sentences. Especially even word games like taboos, categories. Bust out the old games. I bet a lot of those kids have never played before, and just have a good time. All right. So lastly, we're going to talk about growth mindset. Growth mindset is going to be beneficial to everyone, students, tutors, any age, any grade, whatever. I myself am always working on growth mindset and always trying to talk to the kids about it. Excuse me. Basically, growth mindset, the way I describe it is you're building self-motivation. You are just automatically motivating yourself no matter what. Those thoughts of failure or those thoughts of not being successful don't appear too often. And when they do, you are quick to self-motivate and build upon that. So always talking about character traits. We're big on character traits here at School on Wheels. I'm always telling the kids, you know, watch your self-control instead of saying like, sit down or stop running, you know, check your self-control or say thank you, make sure you're being polite. I always say, where's your gratitude? You know, little things like that. So it helps keep them aware. Especially if a student's struggling on their work, I'll say, okay, if you don't get it, let's be creative. Let's find another way to solve this problem. So teaching them those character traits is really going to go a long way. On the slide, I have a link here for a website called Via Character, and it's a character strength survey that I personally took myself. And it really breaks down all the character traits and lets you know which ones you value the most versus which ones that aren't as much of a value to you. It's not saying you don't have those skills. It's just saying that you don't utilize them or value them as much as other skills. So I've given this survey to students, and this way you're able to see, is that student analytical? Is that student creative? Do they value independence? Do they value teamwork? What do they value so that you can figure out the best way to work with them? All about reframing your words is how you're going to get through growth mindset. Number one thing I always tell tutors, question your students on everything. I try to avoid telling my students what to do or what they should be doing. I try to ask them, you know, what should you be doing right now? Oh, I'm supposed to be doing my homework. Cool, why aren't you? You know, then they'll say like, oh, I'm really stressed out. Well, what stressed you out? I have in no way guided them. I have in no way told them what to feel or think. And it's just purely asking them questions and not being so authoritative and disciplinarian. So you definitely want to work on doing that, turning those statements into questions and training your brain to just automatically think positive and to automatically self-motivate, so that you want to keep moving forward. You know, one of my favorite Disney movies is Meet the Robinsons, and the robots constantly, the whole movie is just about keep moving forward. All of these failed inventions, and they keep moving forward. So I always say that to my student, okay, what are you going to do now? I don't know. So, well, we're going to keep moving forward. We're going to figure out what the next step is. Even if you don't know, we're going to move forward and figure it out. So that's just a great way to help the students build and grow, and also to remind them that their traumatic past or their current traumatic living situation is not going to continue to stifle them forever. You know, what is happening right now is not what is happening forever. And if you keep moving forward, it can change. Or if you choose to stay stagnant, it won't change. So just reminding them those things and just realizing kids are crazy smart. They are a lot more clever and wise than people think, and just retraining their brain to want to do good and to want to continually succeed is going to be a huge improvement for all. So there's always great wordings that you could change things up. So I hear students say a lot of times, this is too hard, I give up, I'm just not good at this, blah, blah, blah. And you want to change it up. I always ask, like, if a kid says, this is too hard, I'm like, okay, well, how long have you been working on it? 5 minutes? Well, you know, might take a little bit longer than 5 minutes, and talking to them about putting effort and time. You know, even to say, like, I just can't do math. I used to say that all the time. I prefer English. I just don't do math. And then I discovered statistics and realized, oh, I can do math. So being able to tell students, like, just because you can't do something now doesn't mean you can't train your brain or learn how to do it. Your brain is always growing. If a student says, I make a mistake, I'll right away say, sweet, so you just learned something. So right away, you're trying to combat those negative thoughts and reframe them. You also want to avoid, you know, talking kind of cheesy. I know this one right here, it says, I give up. And the thinking one is, I'll use some of the strategies we've learned. I've never really heard a third grader say, Miss Allison, can you teach me some new strategies, you know? So you might want to say, like, if the kid says, I give up, have you tried every single option in the world? And the kid will look at me like, no. I'm like, then why do you give up? There's some more things we could try. So just making it silly, making it a little more playful. When a student tells me, like, I'm just so smart, I just got this, then I'll automatically tell the student, you know, oh, if you're so smart, then you can answer this, and I'll give them a really, really hard problem. And then they might say, like, well, I can't. I'm like, okay, because, you know, it comes with working out hard. It's not just something you're naturally good at. The reason you don't want the student thinking that is because the second something comes in front of them that's going to be hard, you don't want that thought process to turn into, I thought I was smart, I must be dumb. I don't get this, I must be dumb. No, you're still smart. You're smart because you have figured out how to do this. You don't give up. You are smart because you try multiple ways. So no, don't want that blanket statement of just, oh my God, you're so smart, you're so smart, you're so smart. You know, you don't want to set them up for failure to when they don't get something, they're automatically thinking like, oh, I thought I was smart, I must now be dumb. So just watch your wording, and it'll really, really enhance the child's wording as well. The next one is more of a growth mindset for the older students, because the other one might be a little too immature for some kids. So this one's a little bit more advanced. So teaching them about their character is all about growth. You know, you're never going to stop growing. You always want to be a better person. So even on the first one, it says a growth mindset. You want to push yourself, take risks, enjoy challenges. A fixed mindset would think like, I just look smart in every situation, and I just need to prove myself again. I can never fail. You know, if they think they're smart and they're just perfect, it's setting them up for failure. Then they're not going to know how to bounce back. They're not going to know how to step back and try a new situation. You want to help them deal with setbacks, challenges, critiques, especially if they get criticized for a paper. You don't want them to think this was the worst. You just want them to think, oh, there's one little critique here. What can I learn from it? Or what did they see that I didn't see? Being able to adapt, change it up, figure things out. You know, you really want to set your student up so that in the classroom, out of the classroom, next to you, far away from you, they're going to feel happy, they're going to feel successful, and they're going to feel motivated. On that note, I like to think, I hope I covered everybody's questions and even brought on some new suggestions. Is my song playing? Did anybody have any questions along the way?
We actually did have a couple of questions, and thank you so much, Allison. We appreciate you giving us a lot of good advice here, especially I think for a lot of the tutors having activities to do that they can't think of on their own sometimes can be a little bit difficult. So that's great knowledge and some great experience to add to it. We did have a couple of questions though. One of the ones I thought was really good was if you have a student that maybe gets over competitive when they're working with other students, like if they're not winning, for instance, the example we were given here was their students started crying when they were winning. How would you deal with that particular instance, if it's over competitiveness.
That's actually funny. We've had the exact same situation here just last week where we had a student who, just if they can't get it right or they're just not winning, it just doesn't count. It just doesn't make sense. So what I've done in the past is there's multiple things. Once I've gotten like a dry erase board or a notepad, and I will write down the accomplishment that student has done and remind them of all the good things they've done in order to make them feel like, even if I didn't win this one part, this is all the stuff I have done to feel positive. This is all the stuff I have done to feel good. On top of that, I would have, it might sound a little counterintuitive, but it does help where I'll have the other students encourage them. Like, I've really enjoyed playing with you. To me, it doesn't matter if I win or lose, but it's just been a good time for me. So the kids can console each other, let each other know, like, I wasn't trying to beat you. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. This is just a game, and, I had a good time. So it's setting that example of that sportsmanship. And right away, I would always set up beforehand. There is no prize for the winner. I am not giving anything extra to the winner. Mm-hmm. If there is, then you can address that and say, like, the winner of this will get 5 extra minutes of free time. Anybody who loses and doesn't act like a good sportsman will have to A, B, and C. So they're already being set up for thinking positive, and towards the end of the game, you can even remind them the game's almost over, so-and-so's in the lead. If they end up winning, what are we going to do? Mm-hmm. Are we going to high-five them? Or are we going to scream and kick the board? What are we going to do? So having that pre-set up to what the expectations are, if it's competitive or not, because if it's not competitive and they think it is, bam, failure. Right. Throughout the game, keeping that praise and motivation, and afterwards, if it does end up being a tantrum, even having the other students say, like, hey man, I had a good time playing with you. I'm sorry you lost. I didn't mean to beat you. And just letting those students, I'm not trying to make the students responsible for the kids' bad behavior, mm-hmm. but I just want to set a good example. A good sportsmanship, and be like, so that other student, the student who is upset, won't think that everybody's against him. Sure. Keeping that balance.
I think that's great advice there. One of the other questions that we got, and I wasn't sure if this was answered for this person during the session here, so we'll just ask it now just to be sure. But it was asked, how do you build up the confidence of a child whose circumstances are deterring their motivation? So it's kind of where they are that may be kind of affecting their motivations in the sessions without direct compliments or rewards, was the way that he put it.
Yeah, I actually like speaking to my students about, motivation and different things like that. So to build their confidence, there's a couple things you could do. One of the main things I always do is I will straight up compare the kid to their parent or guardian. Mm-hmm. I might say, if they're staying with their grandma, for example, do you think 10 years ago your grandma was saying, oh, in 10 years, I'm going to live with my grandchild in a shelter? No. So knowing that things change, circumstances are always changing, helping them understand that is really going to build that confidence, to let them know, like, you have control over certain things. You may not have control over where you live, but you have control over how you act where you live. You may not have control over who's in charge of you, but you have control over how you respond to that person. Building their confidence and letting them know that their circumstances do not define them. Their circumstances guide them and are just the backdrop to literally who they are. I have asked students, what do you want to be when you grow up? And if they say, like, a fireman, I'm like, oh, really? You didn't say homeless? Cool. So you do want to, like, keep growing. You do want to build. You do want to break the cycle. And letting them be aware, like I said, kids are so smart. Like, they know what situation they're in. They know what trauma they're facing. They might not understand it, but they do know what's going on. And being able to help them understand their place in that and their control in that is what's going to build that confidence. One of the main phrases I always try to remind people, and I myself am always working on it, but I try hard, and I'm not the best at it, but I avoid saying homeless students. Try saying students that are homeless. Mm-hmm. So it avoids that adjective of, like, this is who you are. Right. It avoids that you are a kid who just happens to be homeless at the moment. But you are going to be a teenager someday who might not be homeless. You are going to be an adult someday who's not going to be homeless, might not be homeless. You know, who you are right now is not who you always are. A lesson I'm always learning as well. You know, everybody's always working on, but that's definitely something that kids can learn as well.
Excellent. I think we have time for one last question here. We have about 4 minutes left here. And we had one question from a tutor that was asking, she had her student actually get kind of physical with her when she tried to turn off the computer. The student really likes working on the computer, likes playing games, doesn't necessarily want to do educational stuff all the time. How would you kind of deal with that if the student is physically trying to kind of, you know, obviously you don't want to wrestle them, you're not. Right. So what's another way to—
You don't ring the bell and bring out round one.
Exactly. So what's another way to maybe approach that?
That's when you're really going to need that structure routine set up. Right away, always have that structure routine so the student knows what to expect. Even if, I know the computers here, actually at the Learning Center, 2 of them have big pieces of paper covering the screens where you literally have to flip the paper over to even see the monitor. So having those immediate expectations lets the student know what is allowed and what is expected, especially if a student decides to get violent or put hands on. Couple things, I've actually had this happen many times when you work with emotionally disturbed students. Number 1, never right away say like, what did you do to me? Why are you doing that? What's going on? You want to just sit back. I've always been like, what just happened? Or why did you do that? Or, you know, you don't want to overreact. You don't want to start screaming, I'm going to tell the staff, or what were you thinking? I actually just kind of sit there in shock and let the student, it gives them a moment to be like, oh yeah, what did I just do? What just happened? Or you can see they genuinely are still angry. So giving yourself that moment to act shocked and kind of be taken aback allows you to assess. You can either see right now that student's also like, well, what did I just do? Or that student's going to keep deep breathing. You might see them get a little bit angrier, and that's when you know you just get up and leave. You just get up and you yell for whoever's in earshot. You ask for help. You never want to deal with them solo. You would always immediately, I would say, use that moment to be in shock and like evaluate, and then that gives you time to see what be the best next step to do. On top of that, if it ever happens, I always make sure to talk to the student even the next day if I have to make a phone call to the mom or something, and to just be like, hey, I was just thinking about what happened yesterday. I just wanted to let you know that I'm not holding it against you. I'm still really excited to see you next week. Just know that if it happens again, you know, we're going to have to reevaluate our friendship or connection, but definitely reconnect with them and let them know, like, I'm still here. I understand something's going on. It might not have been me that triggered you. I was just the one at the safety net at the moment. But I'm coming back, and prep them for that so that they don't come and see you and you walk in and they're like, oh, she's back or he's back. Oh, that you prep ahead of time. Be like, look, whatever you were going through yesterday, that was yesterday. I'm going to get through it. And by the time I see you next, I'll be okay. I hope you are too. And then you could really build a relationship from there.
Excellent. Well, I think that's all the questions we had, and we're just about out of time. It's about 1 o'clock. So I want to thank Allison again so much for doing this. She has some great ideas, and thank everyone for coming out and listening to her today. This will be recorded. It'll be in our workshop library, so you can always come back and check it out if you ever forget anything or if you ever want anything. Other than that, have a great rest of your day, and thank you, Allison.